A middle-aged girl stands with her head bent and looking somewhere at the floor. She tries to find the right words to start talking about exactly what she needs. Calling her father's name, the maiden quickly corrects herself, calling him the head of the family. Hands hold a wreath, which is neatly intertwined with beautiful flowers of different colors. Hoping that everything will go well, the girl runs up to the man and holds out the little thing. She says that this is a gift from her. There is no need to wait for any holiday to please your loved one. Clicking his tongue, showing his irritation, the man turns his gaze to his daughter. Lightning sparkles in the eyes, indicating that nothing good can be expected. Turning towards the baby, the brunette frowns and asks how she dared to call him father. The evil fire spreads to the sides, capturing everything it sees. The man is extremely dissatisfied with the current situation, so he tries not to throw out his anger on his interlocutor. Without accepting the gift, the brunette turns around and walks away, noticing the fact that he has absolutely no time for all sorts of children's games and nonsense. The wreath seems like something too unnecessary, so you can forget about it. The main character is still very young. Her name is Leonora Estrella de Hachania, and she is the only daughter of Duke Hachania. Until recently, she was considered someone special, but everyone knows that the maiden is an illegitimate child of the imperial family. The girl just wanted to be loved, because before that she could not get enough. It really wasn't that bad, but over time everyone turned away from her. Leonora initially grew up as the beloved daughter of Duke Hachania, absorbing the characters of those around her who treated the little child with kindness. One day, everything changed. Along with the news that the child's mother had disappeared, an oracle appeared that said that Leia was an illegitimate child of the imperial family. Such news hit the Duke's pride too much, and therefore the man, because of his wife's betrayal, turned away from his daughter and began to neglect her. This attitude remained until the very end of the girl's life, given the fact that the lady died at the age of 19. From a young age, she suffered from an incurable disease, and then, when everything began to get too steep, the girl died. It was precisely such adventures that were described in the romance novel, which now turned out to be part of the heroine. Her life is the narrative of a minor character in a family of villains from a novel that has previously attracted everyone's attention. In this story, the girl turned out to be a minor heroine, which clearly did not suit the lady. The worst thing was that she was in the body of the daughter of the villain's family, Leonora Estrella. This situation seemed simply frightening to the point of horror. Clutching her head with her hands, the girl cannot believe that all this should happen to the child in whose body she finds herself. She wants to run away from here and never show her face again, because first her father abandons her, and then, in addition, she dies all alone, not hoping that anyone will decide to help her. The hand clenches into a fist when the beauty is full of determination that overflows. She will not just go with the flow, even if nothing can be changed. It's worth trying to jump over your head to achieve your goal. The blonde promises herself that she will do anything. No one will be able to stop her, thereby showing that she is not capable of anything. For this reason, it is worth trying to fight injustice. There are minor characters in this book. One of them is a cute blonde with a smile from ear to ear. He is overly kind and trusting, which makes others treat him condescendingly, showing that he can be used for personal gain. The other boy is no less naive, but more serious. He is older than his brother and also has a different character, so he can definitely adequately assess the situation from the outside. His look is always a little sad. Another no less important figure still remains the villainous father, who should appear only in the prologue. At first, everything will be fine, but it's worth calculating the moment when the good news ends and things turn black. Determination still does not leave the heroine's body. She promises herself that she will change the book and the plot for all family members. She needs to achieve prosperity for the Kachania family at all costs and improve her health so as not to die at such a young age. The girl can take advantage of everything she has because there are a lot of resources in this duchy. If everything goes as it should, the girl has every chance of gaining a foothold in the kingdom and staying alive, ensuring herself a happy and long future. A boy with blonde hair sits on his knees and extends his hand towards his sister. He takes her by the hem of her dress, almost in a pleading voice, asking her to at least do something. Without changing her recipe, the beauty only asks Enoch what's wrong. He begs her for something, asking her to take pity on him, even realizing that the girl has done absolutely nothing. The tears that have been languishing in the corners of his eyes all this time begin to roll down the guy's cheeks, leaving salty trails behind them. He tries not to stutter, but it turns out extremely poorly, so the mission fails. Finally, gathering his thoughts and strength, the guy raises his head, looking searchingly into the girl's eyes. He asks her to let him rest, at least for 5 minutes. It seems that a new flood will begin now, if at least something is not answered to the question posed. Bending a little to be on the same level as her brother, the beauty looks thoughtfully at the floor, plunging into her thoughts, which are confused, not allowing her to come up with anything useful. Deciding to answer, Leonora calls the guy by name, instilling hope in him. Already ready to jump up and run away, he looks with pity and some joy at the baby standing next to him. Opening her mouth and breaking into a scream, the beauty forces the young man to repeat the same words after her. She wants him to remember that Kachanias don't cry, which means that as soon as he says this, he can go make 100 swings of a wooden sword. Running up to his brother, who is standing very close and continues to train, the boy promises that he will do everything, but the beauty is clearly not happy with this situation. She makes him repeat it again in a firmer voice. Hoping that everything will be over soon, the blonde screams at the top of his lungs, which causes a strange reaction of surprise from the guy standing next to him. Now, this is something common, because it happens almost every morning. No longer daring to be distracted from what they are doing, the guy begins to perform the necessary movements so as not to piss off the young lady anymore. No matter how hard it is for them, it doesn't matter because the outcome will be worth it. Slowly exhaling air, the girl moves closer to a stone on which she could rest her back, sitting down on the grass to rest a little and not stop watching her charges. Changing her mind, the beauty climbs onto the cobblestones to look visually taller. She folds her arms over her chest and frowns. The most cherished wish will not be fulfilled soon, because the lady would like the guys to finally grow up and begin to behave more maturely. Nothing ever happens for nothing, so from this we can conclude that the path promises to be long. Starting from the very beginning, they risk dragging this out for several years, but there is still no choice. The girl is smart beyond her years, due to being transferred to another body. If she doesn't do this, she may regret it very much, because her family will simply be destroyed, like minor characters who, as we know, are not particularly important in stories. It all started about a year ago. After a certain incident occurred, the heroine realized that she was in a novel, which she had often read before in her spare time. She knew all the loopholes and the future of the characters. It all seemed strange and began exactly when one of the servants called the girl not by name, but on the contrary, addressing her as Excellency and Mistress. Such an appeal was not accepted as usual, attracting the attention of the man who sits on his lap next to the girl, holding her stuffed bunny, and the attention of the blonde. The knight in a shaking voice says that the lady's ship has capsized in the Ariana Strait. This was the most terrible news for the whole family. The toy falls to the floor with a characteristic sound. We can only hope that this is not true, however, judging by the expression on the man's face. This is happening in reality, and it cannot be avoided. The Duke freezes, trying to find words, or at least regain the power of speech that was lost. Trying not to show his weakness in front of his daughter, he quietly asks the employees if this is true, hoping in his heart that a stupid mistake had occurred. No longer paying attention to the girl standing behind her, the brunette begs her to tell him how it all happened, down to the smallest detail. When it comes to the death of his wife, the guy can't let absolutely anything slide. Cringing and hugging the stuffed bunny tighter, the lady cannot come to terms with what just happened. Various terms are spinning in her head that haunt her, making it clear that everything is bad, which means she will never be happy again. This is definitely the first time for a beauty in such a situation, and there is no doubt about it, but she can't shake the feeling that she has already heard something like this before, which means she knows it like no one else. After a few more minutes, there is deathly silence. Not a single word can be heard in the room, because now, as all normal families should, they will grieve. Deciding to disturb her father, the little girl calls him, holding back her trembling voice. The man immediately turns towards the blonde. He says her name quietly, in a voice that is filled with sadness from loss. The eyes sparkle with pain and tears that are ready to roll down the cheeks at any moment. Coming closer, the Duke squats down and hugs his daughter. He quietly says something and strokes her on the back, trying to calm her down, asking her not to worry, because Noel will definitely return to her family. Without trying to somehow break away from the man, The beauty thinks about how familiar this name is to her. Thousands of thoughts are spinning in your head, making it clear that something is wrong here. It's her mom's name, which means everything must fit. Extending her hand, the girl places it on her father's cheek. She doesn't say anything, just trying to remember something. It's quite difficult for her, because sometimes it feels like there are gaps in her memory that cannot be filled. Looking into the brunette's eyes, the lady thinks about her own thoughts. She doesn't remember at all what her dad's name is, even if this man seems too familiar both emotionally and in appearance too. Turning towards the baby, the man smiles sadly. It seems that the girl is now trying to console Kachania in this way. Putting his palm to his cheek, stopping it on top of someone else's, he smiles warmly, still hiding his pain. The servant, who had been watching this lovely picture all this time, comes closer and calls out to His Highness. He asks him to listen to the news that he managed to find out quite recently. What is said will be incredibly important. The guy standing next to the couple all this time says that many people are talking about pirates. Most likely, this was their doing, because they targeted Empress Ines, who in the end was never present on the ship that they had captured quite recently. Squinting a little, the brunette tries to remember exactly about the girl, because the lady is remembered for being very stubborn, wanting to go with Noel. But in the end, she decided to change her mind literally the day before the trip. Exhaling slowly, the Duke tries to forget all the insults. Now there is no point in being offended by someone, because in the end that happened cannot be changed. Empress Ines left behind a youngest daughter, who is now also completely alone. Something hits your head, like a heavy stone that lands right at the back of your head. The girl in question seems too familiar, even if the baby has never met her in her life, having been born 3 years ago. Ines was quite a famous character. Also being minor, she did not attract too much attention, but played a rather important role in the book, which, as it turned out, became a reality, which terrifies the heroine. At that moment, when the beauty heard the woman's name, her thoughts, which all this time could not get together, trying among themselves, instantly became clear, making it clear that everything was not so simple. Memories from a past life gradually began to return. This was expected, since everything around seemed strange and alien, only because this was not the blonde's homeworld. She read the story, and that's where she managed to get, even without wanting to. The small hand slowly rises, and stopping near the chest, clenches into a fist. The lips move, not making a single sound, despite the fact that the girl is trying very hard to do everything as best as possible. Coming closer to her father, the little girl, unexpectedly even to herself, grabs her father's jacket, screaming his name. Now it becomes clear why and where this person seemed so familiar, even if it did not inspire any confidence. Without betraying his emotions, the Duke moves away from the child, stroking her head. Everything was mixed up, because the loss of his wife and the good news that the daughter had finally learned her father's name seemed almost incompatible, despite the fact that it remained true. Straightening up and standing to his full height, the guy nods his head, because everything turned out to be true. His name really is Gaspard, so it's worth remembering the name and not forgetting it. At that age, it is difficult to say anything, but perhaps a miracle happened. The blonde continues to stare continuously at her interlocutor, her eyes wide. She wants to scream from the realization of what happened. It seems strange that dreams that didn't even exist just came true like that. Falling to her knees, the beauty understands that now there is no point in trying to complain about anything, because it could be worse. As if in a vacuum, the little girl hears a voice coming from the surface, asking if Leonora is okay. All my thoughts cleared up in just a few seconds, helping this period of time end. Now it became clear where Leia knew her father's name, and it was also clear what kind of place the young lady lived in. The man was Gaspard Désiré de Hachania, a stern duke who treated everyone coldly, proving himself in battle. This family is the one that was exterminated without even blinking an eye. They all looked like they came from a novel that the heroine read in a past life before she died in the most ridiculous way. Even the surname itself is literally translated as insignificant. The family had status, which made the game interesting, but the author decided that everyone except the main characters could die or lose their title under any circumstances, which were not even that important. The eyes mindlessly looked to the side, not having the strength to concentrate on anything. The blonde is completely horrified, because she has no idea how it happened that she managed to become a minor character. This seems to be the worst thing in this situation, because you don't want to die. The beauty moved a minor villain into the body, who appears only in the prologue. Immediately after it, everything will disappear, and readers will forget the heroine. In her past life, the lady lived quietly and did what she was told. Her adoptive father, the head of national security, chose a path for her that could and should be followed. The woman followed in his footsteps and became a special agent. No one gave her a choice, so she learned everything related to it, trying to do everything as best as possible. Sometimes the training was too difficult and grueling, which made the beauty cry at night, not understanding why the world was so unfair. The girl blindly believed that someday her parent would recognize her and love her as his own daughter. At that moment, it seemed something unattainable. Perhaps, if everything came true, the brunette would finally become a happy person. She really missed the warmth of her relatives, but apparently, living a normal life with a normal family was something not meant for Leia. It was then that the irreparable happened. The only advantage was a good job, which helped to fully meet my needs, but that's where the list ended. That night, the father betrayed his daughter without recognizing her. Leonora died completely alone, having no friends or acquaintances who could come to the rescue and help save the brunette's life. A sad end always comes to most lonely people. Until now, the baby lived happily as the youngest daughter of the ducal family, without remembering her past life. Everything seemed normal and was going as usual, but just a few minutes turned my whole life upside down. The memories that we managed to get back seemed to be over, because according to them, the heroine, the youngest daughter of Gaspar Cachania, was supposed to die at the age of 19 from an illness that would begin very soon. This situation did not amuse the poor girl at all, who simply did not know what to do with all the information that had fallen. She won't be able to escape from here, which means that at 3 years old, she will have to somehow resolve the situation. Breaking away from her suffering, the blonde turns towards the servants. Judging by the plot of the book, very soon another thing will happen that will shock the entire estate. Such moments should not be overlooked, even though they can be avoided. Gaspard, tearing himself away from his daughter, approaches the maid, saying that Leia is not well, judging by the way she is behaving. Doctors, like servants, should pay special attention to this in order to avoid consequences that will be irreparable. Bowing, the brunette promises that everything will be done. If everything continues exactly as it is now, at this rate, not only the Duke, but also the entire Cachania family will face a terrible ending filled with pain. Decisiveness has never been a big deal, but it might help now. Leonora must grow up and stop living longing for someone's love, like in her past life. Then her target betrayed the heroine, so this time everything should be completely different. It will be a terrible mistake to make any miscalculation in this life. A second chance is given only once, and not to everyone, which makes it automatically priceless. The girl is only a minor character, whom her father loves very much. Now that the little girl has remembered everything, she must do everything to prevent this novel from developing according to the plot. It seems that this would be the worst decision or death warrant that the girl herself would sign. Taking off and running through the corridors, the princess stops near a huge door, which is her goal. Right now, there are only 2 important things to do. First, the blonde must survive herself, and then make sure that the whole family remains alive and happy for many years after their end date. Throwing open the door, the lady runs into the room where there are 2 blondes, distracted from studying some material in books. Each of them breaks away and asks what happened, but there is no answer. The idea is quite spontaneous, but quite workable, so the heroine is going to train her brothers. Freezing and trying to find the right words, the girl realizes that this is too difficult, so she simply calls the couple by name, saying that she really needs their help, because without them, she will never be able to cope alone. Leonora promised herself to change the plot, but all these 3 years, she was just a child who did not pay attention to anything. A fairly decent period of time was lost without a trace. During this time, the beauty realized that finding a solution was not so easy. One of the boys quickly approaches his little sister and sits next to her on the sofa, gently running his hand through her smooth hair. He checks to see if the young lady, who seems out of sorts or just sick, is okay. There is concern in the eyes. Enoch Gwendel de Cachania is the 3rd brother in the estate. His thoughts are always pure, and he himself is sometimes even too naive. realizing that this world is completely different. He can never refuse help to anyone or do anything bad. The second brother is Sylvester Adgard de Cachania. The boy is in no way inferior to the other in his behavior and appearance. They are somewhat similar, although they didn't take much from their father. Caring is also one of the most important, so the guy asks about the main character's well-being. Sitting in the middle of the sofa with my eyes closed and thinking about how to answer such questions. Looking at their faces, it is not difficult to agree that this is happening in reality, and the girl ended up in a novel. Both boys are too handsome and friendly. With such a situation, thoughts creep in a completely different direction. The girl thinks that if they were the main characters, the guys would notice that she is a misfit and not a true member of the family. Virgo still does not live according to the plot of the book, changing events like gloves. There will still be no choice, because all these are just trifles compared to what could happen if history takes its course. The girl really wouldn't want the Cachanaya family to end. Leia is pulled out of her thoughts by Sylvie, who places his cool hand on the beauty's forehead. He carefully straightens her hair, saying that she doesn't seem to have a fever. Now it remains a mystery what needs to be done next, not knowing in what condition the baby arrives. The hand reaches out to the body again, no longer probing her sister's skin to check her body temperature. A sad look looks intently at his brother. They are so sweet and calm that this only makes them feel even more sorry. It doesn't seem fair at all that guys will die simply because they are supporting characters. The door opens with a slam, and a stern voice is heard from behind it. The man reminds Anoka and Sylvester that they are currently scheduled to train. Nodding in response, the boy assures that they remember everything, which means Barristan does not need to be reminded of anything. Cupping his sister's cheeks, the younger brother looks into her eyes, begging Leia to tell her if she's sick or needs help. They will return very soon, and then, if anything happens, they will be able to be there all the time. Without looking away from the beauty, the blonde says that it will be difficult for him to concentrate on training because of his worry about Leonora's well-being. Sylvie, standing nearby, only silently assesses the situation, realizing that it looks funny. The realization makes it clear that the brother just wants to skip class. The condition of his sister or her well-being is not so important to him. Therefore, pushing her hands away, the blonde orders her to be released. Ino, you should hurry up and not try to delay the inevitable. Just about to leave the room, the guy cuddles up to his little sister, giving her hugs, hoping that she doesn't get sick and feels good. Sometimes the impression is extremely misleading, which is very confusing. Turning around and heading towards the door, the blonde once again promises that they will return soon, thereby hinting that the baby should sit here all the time. Strange sensations remain, as if forever. The girl puts her palm to her cheek, letting herself immerse herself in pleasant sensations. After the memories returned, ordinary actions on the part of other people felt too awkward and unusual, causing a blush to appear on the cheeks. Perhaps this is all because no one has ever treated the heroine this way before in a past life. No one cared about her, so now every drop of concern was happily absorbed. Sylve, who has been nearby all this time, comes closer, asking again if everything is okay. He noticed that today the beauty was behaving unusually strangely, thereby undermining her image of a carefree child. The words are interrupted by the coach, who forces the guy to leave the room. Sighing and hoping that something will change, the blonde bows her head and rubs her temples. Meeting with the family didn't help much in this matter, even if the girl really had high hopes for it. The legs dangle off the sofa and then fall to the floor. Now you can't waste a minute to get what you want. She just needs to get down to business together and cry because of everything that happened to her in her past life due to the fault of her adoptive family. Starting to run, as if someone was chasing her from behind with a whip, the lady runs towards the table to find the necessary supplies. It would be best, as soon as the opportunity arises, to understand the situation to the maximum and provide yourself with a clear plan of action. Once near the table, the blonde looks at its surface. Due to her small stature, the girl does not immediately reach all the things she needs, but the chair helps in all endeavors. Grabbing a piece of paper that seems quite durable in appearance, the girl thinks about a way to keep a diary. If she writes in Korean letters, no one will understand a single word, thereby saving her fate. Lowering herself to the floor and taking the pen in her hand, Leonora begins to write her first and last name, and then her age. It is also worth mentioning facts such as the fact that she is the only daughter of the family and heiress. According to the original story, the girl is destined to die at the age of 19 from an illness that could not be cured by removing it from the beauty's body. This situation seems too sad despite the fact that it is true. The father of the main character is Gaspard Désiré de Hachania. This is the Duke of the Villaining Empire and the right hand of the emperor. Having performed many noble deeds, the man proved himself and, literally breaking through everything around him, earned this title. Hesitating a little and looking up from her notes, the blonde realizes that no matter how sad it may sound, it's only just now that everything is exactly like this. Soon Gaspard will no longer belong to the knighthood and duchy. The girl's mother is Duchess Noel. She is a beauty, the only female admiral in the empire, and again, this title was acquired for a reason. The blonde worked hard and was a pure-hearted person. Immediately after giving birth, the mother set sail with her close friend, the Empress. She persuaded her to go with her so that she wouldn't be so bored alone, thereby dragging them both into the abyss of death. The pen still glides briskly across the sheet of paper, writing out the necessary words and letters. 3 years after the start of the voyage, the admiral was kidnapped by pirates and went missing. Nothing was known about her whereabouts, except that this was the end. Everything turns out to be not so simple, because that same ill-fated rumor began to spread immediately after Noelle disappeared. Someone tried very hard, hoping that they could survive the girl from the estate, turning her into trash. The oracle, which told the whole truth, did not say anything for sure, saying only that among the children of Kachania, there is one who inherited the blood of the imperial family. Such information was extremely vague, preventing one from accurately understanding the essence of the words. Immediately after the conversation, rumors spread that the admiral had entered into a conspiracy with a member of the imperial family, and the proof was the contents on the scroll, which was read out. This knocked Gaspard down, who was very sad for his wife even more. The man was devastated to learn that his beloved woman had betrayed him. It was not difficult to guess that the illegitimate child was Leonora. Gradually, the father turned away from his daughter, realizing that he could no longer be with her. Everything went downhill despite the fact that it started long before the end. After everything that happened, enough time passed for the Duke to refuse to obey the imperial family, and the reason for his betrayal was a very real story. The death of Leonora was to blame. The girl fought, but in the end lost, never finding the strength to improve her health from an illness that seemed so terrible. Everything turned out this way only because the heroine was a minor character. There was only one single cure for this disease with the full name Ruhr, elixir. It was found a long time ago in a special place, and this was also discussed in detail in the book. Instead of getting the medicine, the girl missed her only chance. The bottle with the substance went to the main character of the novel, who suffered from the same disease. The beauty's name was Ines, and she looked somewhat like a blonde. The reason for treason against the state somehow does not add up. The death of his daughter, from whom Gaspar had turned his back on his own free will many years ago, did not seem like something significant. Perhaps it's all about the hero's character, because he is just a minor character who is never able to expel an illegitimate child, a stronghold of his wife's infidelity. Instead of somehow changing the situation, he began to experience a burning feeling of guilt when Leia left the world. The original story did not specify which of the children was illegitimate, but it turned out to be Leonora. The 3 brothers are very similar to their father, so there was no doubt about them, which irritated the heroine a little. As soon as the rumor spreads, the affectionate father, and after him the entire duchy, will renounce the girl. Squeezing the paper forcefully with her hand and looking somewhere to the side, the girl decides for herself that she needs to somehow be the first to get the elixir. If everything is left as it is now, then the beauty will die in this life too. This activity will be incredibly difficult due to obstacles. First, you need to overcome the endless desert, followed by the great ocean, and only then find the jar. The girl would never even go there, performing such a feat. The only person who can get the right thing is someone else, someone unfamiliar, because this is not the main character or even His Highness the Emperor, which seems strange at first glance. The person who will be able to help Leonora, pulling her out of this hell, will be none other than the first brother, whose face the baby has never seen. He left the estate a long time ago, so he did not witness the birth of the heroine. The man went traveling, hoping that he would not have to be somewhere near his family. He had a peculiar character that made itself felt, forcing him to constantly run away from himself and everyone around who wants to help. A guy named Zachary will really be the one to get the medicine he needs. Over many years, the young man got the hang of it and therefore went in search of the right thing. He managed to do this like no other, in better shape. Everyone immediately has a question. Why did the man give the elixir to Inez and not to his sister? However, everything is quite simple. This is because Zachary in the original was the second male character to be in some sort of relationship with a girl. It was unbearable for him to see her suffering. Forgetting about Leonora, the guy committed this act, making his choice. The suffering of his beloved was absolutely incomparable to his dying younger sister, whom he did not even know that well. In each book, the plot is the same, because the main character is an ordinary fool who sees nothing but love, which blinds him. Squeezing her eyes shut and grunting her teeth in anger, the blonde sighs in annoyance. This situation clearly does not suit her, even if it could be attributed to the fact that Zachary did not understand what he was doing, not fully realizing the importance of the situation. Falling to the floor and spreading her arms to the sides, the baby sighs, closing her eyes resentfully after blinking numerous times. Everything would have been simpler if her brother had given the elixir to Leia. The likelihood that he will do this is practically zero. The goal of changing the course of history will be difficult. Looking around, the beauty is ready to cry, because after she remembered her past life, the headache only intensified, trying to take over the beauty. The body instantly became heavy, as if someone had chained several head-sized stones to it. A click on the front door distracts me from my thoughts. The girl begins to get nervous, realizing what a strange position she is in now. Surely these are brothers or servants who came to check on the princess. The predictions turned out to be correct because two maids entered the room. One of them was called Lulu, and the second was Lala. They were blood sisters, although they were not very similar to each other. The brunette says that it's time for a snack, which means you need to sit down at the table where they will put the tray. Approaching closer to the beauty, the maid leans a little, asking what the young lady was so busy with that she didn't even hear the knock on the door. The heroine, of course, has no answer, because no one should know her truth or anything about her past life. Picking up the piece of paper from the floor, Lala examines the written letters in surprise. There is slight surprise on her face when the girl tries to object, shouting that there is absolutely nothing special there. It is impossible for the maid to understand that these are letters and not simple scribbles. After a few seconds, the girl breaks into a kind smile. She thought that the girl was studying, but it turned out that she was just drawing. Touched by this activity, the brunette says that even the mistress's doodles turn out simply beautiful. Now you can relax, because the mystery remains unsolved. The girl is lucky that she is just a child, which means that everything is perceived as the actions of a child incapable of normal things. A tray is placed on the table, on which there are 2 rivers and a glass of water. A bunch of beautiful and sweet-smelling roses from the garden make you feel even better, while Lulu wishes the princess bon appétit. Grabbing hold of one cookie that was sitting on top of another, the blonde opens her mouth and begins to reach out to start eating. However, she is interrupted by a voice that wants to say something, not wanting to upset the baby too much. The brunette frowns and says that Chef Roberti couldn't make his favorite juice because some ingredients were simply missing. He was really apologetic and hoped it wouldn't be too much of a problem. Continuing to apologize, the maid asks to be patient today and remain without a drink. But tomorrow it will definitely be served for breakfast, as soon as the new ingredients needed for this arrive. Nodding to let everyone around her know that there is no problem, the beauty continues to chew slowly while the maids around her wail. In their opinion, the baby was offended and now looks away upset, even if the cook promised that everything would be fine tomorrow. Deciding not to interrupt the conversation, the beauty just turns away. No one knows that she is upset, not because of this at all. Virgo just wants to eat while she can, because as soon as rumors about an illegitimate child from the imperial family spread, there will be no choice in food. The estate is exposed to rain and hail. The weather in the evening turned out to be simply terrible, spoiling absolutely everything for everyone around, making it clear that something terrible was already very close, just around the corner. The baby is standing in the corridor in only socks and a dress, looking somewhere out the window. She is scared, and before, when it was raining, the father always stayed and was next to his daughter so that she would not be so scared. Now she is completely alone, not knowing what to do next. Turning towards the empty room, the beauty sighs quietly. He didn't come today, so the living room was completely empty. It was frustrating, because before that everything was different, and the memories remained in my head. Catching herself in such thoughts, the beauty quickly shakes her head. Perhaps it will be even better, because around now the man should find out that Leia is not his own daughter. Cringing, the girl wipes away the tears that are running down her cheeks for no reason. The realization comes immediately. It seems as if the whole world has turned upside down. I don't want to admit how lonely the little girl was. She was not used to this, even if her past life was a complete horror without friends and interests. Slowly sinking to the cold floor, Leonora looks away, realizing that she is starting to go crazy. Everything happens as if in slow motion, not allowing you to think about anything and weigh the pros and cons in order to make a decision. Small hands nervously squeeze the hem of the dress, which is already completely wrinkled due to the nerves that continue to overtake the beauty. She is frightened by the very thought that Kachania is simply absent, even if most likely the oracle has not yet had time to tell the news that will mix all the colors, turning everything black. It seems that once the body became a child, then awareness began to adapt to it, allowing everything to be ruined. Now it becomes clear that what is happening is a mind game played against the heroine. In her past life, she experienced great loneliness, so it's strange that now even a small detail or trifle seems so much worse. It is much more difficult for a child to understand why certain things happen, even if the brain understands what is what. The time that the baby spent with her father is just one moment, even if the happiness flowed for 3 years. The girl was not to blame for cheating on her mother, who could not restrain herself. Even if there is still time, the blonde already misses the warmth of the Duke. The man always made sure that his daughter was the happiest person on earth, even if he did not know how everything would turn out. The toys sit sadly against the wall, as if they are also anticipating what is about to happen very soon, spoiling the whole outcome for the heroine. Leonora is afraid that she will miss the moment when things go downhill. Right now, stupid rumors are spreading throughout the estate that the baby is an illegitimate child from the imperial palace. Over time, everything will change, even if such a shock takes a few days. Even Lulu and Lala will no longer look in the direction of their favorite. Horror is again reflected in the girl's eyes. She became weak, and that's why she became so emotional. At this rate, she would definitely not be able to survive in this world, given the fact that she wanted to do too many things before leaving here. Grabbing her cheeks with her cold palms, the beauty tries to bring herself to her senses, realizing that she simply needs her brain to start working, helping her heart to calm down at least a little. Getting up from the ground, the girl decides to finally do something. You need to pull yourself together and behave differently than a 3-year-old child should. The body has become too young, but the soul remains the same, just with added memories from the new reality. You need to focus on what is most important, and this is the elixir, which must be obtained at any cost. However, this will not be easy. The baby sits on the bed and calls the maids. A sunny morning arrived, which did not bode well, even if everything seemed normal. In the room are Lulu and Lala, who, in theory, should have abandoned the mistress. Smiling, the woman exclaims how cute Leonora is after sleep. There are still many questions that will most likely not be answered. The blonde freezes, trying to decide what she should do next. The morning is completely different, but perhaps that's only because the maids still haven't heard about the rumor that spread last night. Getting out of bed, the beauty begins her remark, hoping that she will be able to convey the truth. It hurt, but there was still no choice, even if I wanted to. The words are cut off mid-sentence because someone enters the room, opening the door with a loud knock, which hits the wall, making it clear that the person has the power that belongs to the knights. Several men in cloaks stop in the middle of the room. They all serve the Duke, remaining just as stern and loyal to the cause. Their faces express absolutely no emotions, even if everything is clear without it. Running up to the bed, Lala blocks the passage, spreading her arms to the sides. The face shows misunderstanding mixed with anger at everyone around. She asks what the knights forgot in the little lady's room. They had no right to enter here without permission, which was not obtained. The blond young man turns towards the baby, examining her and looking into her eyes. He remains as unshakable in his decisions and actions, realizing that he has absolutely no choice. Orders must be carried out without delay. Turning to his partner, the man nods in response, saying that they should get down to business. Silence no longer fills the space, making it clear that this is the end of a joyful life. The blonde doesn't dare say or object. Slowly getting off the soft bed, she heads to the side to get ready. She will have to travel to another estate, where she will live for the near future, or rather, until the very end. The maid still can't calm down, arguing with the guards. She forbids touching the things of the Duchess, who is still too young to go anywhere. There is a lot of injustice in the world, and this is made clear, even if no one listens to the woman. The blonde stands aside and listens to the conversation, realizing that this was to be expected. This action could have happened even at night, but apparently the Duke was too shocked. Hachil ordered the princess's room to be moved to a separate estate, located somewhere in the forest not far from here. The girl is no longer part of the family, and this is made clear with the help of such simple manipulations. Stopping between the maids, the heroine hears them discussing the rumor, because both do not believe that it is true. Leonora turned out to be right, because Lulu and Lala knew about everything from the very beginning. Interrupting conversations that were not pleasing to the knights, the man, coming closer, orders the women to leave the room. They are maids of this castle, so they will no longer be able to care for and serve their favorite. The girls turn towards the gentleman, trying to hold back their tears and shock. They don't want to part, because from the moment the baby was born, they have always been with her and managed to become attached. Their opinion no longer counts. Going out into the street, the heroine begins her slow path to the estate. It can be seen somewhere deep in the forest, sparkling in the sun. Such a turn does not seem out of the ordinary. Everything is in perfect order, because Leia expected such an outcome. The knights walking ahead do not pay attention to everything around them, however. Feeling sorry for the girl, they decide to warn her. It was raining, so the ground is very slippery. It's best to be careful not to fall and hurt or break anything. The blonde nods slowly, making it clear that she understood everything, and she has absolutely no need for unnecessary explanations. The backpack is not very heavy, but for a child, it is a noticeable weight. It's not the best thing to realize that things turned out this way, but there's nothing you can do about it. One of the guys shows more pity due to his character, so he asks his partner to stop, because it's probably incredibly difficult for the girl. Perhaps someone should even pick it up to make the process faster. The blonde refuses, shouting that there is nothing good about the heroine to take her in his arms. She is the illegitimate child of the woman who betrayed their duke. None of them deserve respect, even though their partner asks them to watch their words. There is no direct evidence that it was about Leonora, especially since she was evicted until a decision was made. No feuds subside, because men continue to quarrel. This attachment is more like a cell, which worsens the situation, making it overall more wobbly. The little girl smiles friendly, pretending that everything is fine, even if inside she is very angry. The knights do not watch their words at all in the presence of a child, and if this had happened in a past life, they simply would not have gotten away with it because of the character of the brunette, who is very tough. Trying to restrain herself, the little girl still smiles, while she literally feels cold. One of the guys shrinks and tells his companion that he felt something, to which he simply agrees. The separate building turns out to be much smaller than the one in which Leia previously lived with her family. It didn't make it any worse or downright terrible, because the estate was still spacious and beautiful. Stopping, the blonde begins to swallow air. After everything that happened, they finally reached the house, and now it seemed like a bad dream. There was not enough strength for anything, and this was precisely a huge minus in the child's body. Short legs and poor endurance did not change themselves. The guy comes closer and puts down a box of things, turning to Mrs. Nora, saying that they delivered the girl and her things. The name that just left the knight's lips is incredibly frightening because it is quite familiar. Smiling an evil smile and trying to hide her motives, the woman nods, saying that she can take care of the rest. She didn't need more information, because she knew perfectly well about all the rumors and other gossip. The blonde slowly turns towards teacher Nora. The lady was a sadly familiar character who also had a separate page in the book. Not much has been written about it, but it also paid off. The girl did not want to see her today, understanding what would happen next. Frowning, the brunette decides to joke from the doorway, calling the beauty a young mistress, but then breaks off the phrase, saying that she does not yet know whether it is possible to call her in this way. The hints were too clear to be missed and not understood in detail. Following the woman, the baby looks around. They are in a part of the mansion that no one cares for. As far as we know, even the servants do not show their nose here, trying in every possible way to avoid this place. Looking at this picture, it immediately becomes clear that the princess is now rejected by society number 1. In any case, the time spent in the annex will not be long. One can hope for this, because very soon the emperor will decide that the fruit of treason is Leonora, so he will call her to his palace, fearing the spread of rumors that the pedigree of the imperial family is tainted by someone so simple. The girl has to speed up because she can't keep up with the lady at all. The woman seems to be mocking her, so she behaves appropriately. Her face shows dissatisfaction with the situation because it turns out that she does not tolerate children behaving in this way. Stopping abruptly, the brunette turns and, shouting, orders the princess to move faster. According to her, she is very busy, so there is no need to take away precious time that could be spent on something more important. Just about to move forward again, the lady thinks about something and says that she really has something to do, unlike the one who idly exists for other people's money, without giving anything in return due to her age. The blonde freezes, trying to process what she just heard. It is impossible for a woman to say this to someone like a child who is only 3 years old. Having a soul that is already quite old, the beauty was not offended, but any child in her place would have been crying long ago. Clenching her teeth and trying not to grind them, the girl understands that she must endure. She still has no other choice, even if she really wanted to escape from here and get back to her father at a time when he still loved and appreciated his daughter. The servants of Duke Kachania may not like the fact that the beauty is the child of someone else. They are all very loyal to their master, despite everything, because he did a lot for them. This becomes clear after numerous moments when the servants save the man, helping him with literally everything. This is quite logical, but the woman's behavior definitely crosses all boundaries. She seems to have a special hatred for the child, even if there is almost no reason for it. Nothing has been clarified with 100% accuracy yet, so there is no point in it. Raising her concentrated gaze at the woman who is still slowly walking ahead, the little girl does not understand whether her feelings for her father are something more. Perhaps the teacher felt something stronger than just devotion, which, however, was none of her business. Rescue was more important now. Nora is a specific character who, after all, plays a certain role in the life of the couple and the whole family in this fairy tale world. Much more could be written about her, but she is an extremely secretive person who experiences extreme discomfort when she is being watched. Walking down the corridor and slowing down a little, the lady stops near a door. Slowly opening the entrance, the brunette points her hand inside. This is where the heroine will live, because this room is intended for her by the Duke himself, which is definitely kept silent. Turning her gaze to the room, the little girl freezes. Even if she were older, she would definitely experience exactly the same emotions and disgust. Each object is covered with a layer of dust and cobwebs, which are probably inhabited by spiders, which will only interfere with living here. If you leave, the situation will not get better, it will only worsen the situation. Tilting her head to the side, trying to appear friendly, the brunette says that if something is not clear, you need to ask now, because after that, the woman will simply go about her business, leaving the girl completely alone to do what she wants. Deciding on an important step, the blonde asks about the line she said earlier. After all, the maid mentioned someone who exists idly. No one specified who exactly they were talking about, but it would be nice to understand what exactly and why. Freezing and turning to the side to say something, Nora grins disgustingly. She definitely decided to test Leonora's nerves, not knowing what the girl is capable of when she is angry over trifles, distracting her from her plans. Turning and pointing her finger towards the sky, the brunette talks about the Duke's dead wife. According to her, the lady was a petty and unfaithful woman who eventually betrayed Kachani, who tried so hard to do everything for his family. Lowering herself to be closer to the blonde, Nora again points her finger and says that the dirty deed also has a result, and this is Gaspar's youngest daughter, who is standing right now a meter away from the lady. Frowning and trying to swallow anger and resentment, the heroine does not understand why all the servants in this estate are like this. Perhaps the woman is too surprised by the admiral's action, but one cannot say such things to a child, especially about her relatives. Running to the side, Thereby scaring the beauty a little, the brunette begins her tirade about what a dirty woman she was who left Gaspar, giving him to doubt his love and his own efforts, which simply went down the drain. Bending over and theatrically putting her hand to her chest, the brunette, almost crying, complains that someone dared to offend her beloved head. The punishment itself found the mother, because even the boat capsized because of that. If Nora were in Noel's place, she would definitely take care of Kachania and take care of him with all her might, allowing him to relax. Not understanding what this whole show is all about, the blonde, straightening her hair, continues to look in surprise at the woman who seemed to be completely out of her mind. I would like to say that this is too inappropriate for a servant, but now the princess also has no say. The mother, whom the baby doesn't even remember now, is being insulted, and something needs to be done about it. You can't just listen to all this dirt and let yourself get bogged down in it. So when deciding to take at least some action, the Duchess coughs a little to attract attention. Deliberately looking into Nora's eyes, the baby says that it is time for the lady to wake up from her sleep. No matter what she does or what she says, it will always be the case that Gaspard will remain indifferent to her. These words clearly offend the maid, who freezes, fighting a nervous tic. Turning to shouting, the teacher again reminds that the girl is not a child from the Kachania family, because dirty blood flows in her, even if it is someone from the imperial family. The tirade is interrupted by sounds of anger from Leonora. She can no longer withstand the meaningful insults that are constantly pouring towards her family and the youngest person. This is beyond any strength and patience. Throwing off the heavy backpack that had been on her back all this time, slowing down the girl and slowing down her actions, which they wanted to give more sweepingly, the little girl climbs forward to once and for all teach this maid how to express herself. The knights, who had left the mansion a few minutes ago, retreat into the distance along the path. Some screams are heard from the direction of the castle, which let you know that something is happening there, so it's worth going back and checking the security. Apparently, these were screams from an adult woman, who now began to squeal like a pig. She tries to do at least something to save herself, but nothing else helps. A woman's voice resounds menacingly throughout the castle, ordering her to let go of her hair, which has long been disheveled. The roots hurt very much, preventing her from relaxing, while the maid is trying to escape. The blonde couldn't get away, squeezing the girl's hair in her hands more tightly, trying to punish her for the words she said as much as possible. Nora doesn't understand at all where the child gets so much strength, because it seems like something out of the ordinary. Finally bounces off the princess. The rival raises her hand to do the inevitable. It doesn't matter to her what exactly happens next, because the thirst for revenge clouds her eyes, preventing her from assessing the situation normally. Just about to do what was planned, the teacher freezes. She can't stop looking at the girl standing opposite her. The baby doesn't do anything about it at all, as if waiting for her fate, which could have been avoided. No child would behave so strangely in such a situation. The blonde stands with her eyes narrowed, giving off new pairs of anger, while not regretting anything and not intending to get scared or start crying from hopelessness. A horde of knights is approaching from the exit, who heard the screams and immediately arrived at the first call to resolve the conflict situation, saving themselves and everyone else. The teacher's hand immediately drops and squeezes the hem of the dress, putting all her strength into it. She no longer has the strength to do anything, because being behind bars because of a minor mistake will not be the best ending to her career and life in the future, because for this you can get imprisoned for many years. Adjusting her hair so that no one would notice that the woman looks like an animal that crawled out of a cave, she nods easily, saying that Mrs. Leonora is just not quite used to the new conditions. The baby clearly didn't want to deal with it just like that, so she threw a huge tantrum. Folding her arms across her chest, Leia looks away, not showing her angry gaze. Apparently, the beauty was not completely stupid, since it occurred to her to lie. Things could have turned out worse for her than for the child, even if it was the blonde herself who started the fight. Now you should just forget about it and try to attract the attention of the knights. The girl understands when family and servants openly express an opinion, because this is not prohibited, but the girl will definitely not put up with the fact that some upstarts who have no rights to this look down on her. Grabbing the sleeve of the man's coat, the girl tries to force him to look at her. There's nothing left to do but behave like the poor little child she in fact was, not taking into account all the exploits in her past life. The eyes double in size when the baby imitates the tears of regret that children usually have. She says she's just hungry. No one ever fed the girl after she was brought here, so that was a minus. In fact, there was some truth in this, because the heroine would not have asked for food if she had not been hungry. She really wanted to eat, because this whole journey to the castle had tired the child out enough. The legs were too short, which made the lady regret that she was no longer an adult. Turning away from Leonora, the knights with a face showing condemnation look at the maid, who was apparently doing everything except her direct duties. She didn't care about anyone except Gaspard, but that didn't change the fact that she had to take care of his daughter. Grunting, the lady tries to restrain the new wave of aggression that burst out every time surrounded by this little misunderstanding. There was still no choice, because even if something like this happened in the family, everyone in the castle was determined to check on their sister and daughter. The woman leaves the room, lifting her dress, which drags along the floor with a rustle. Frowning her brows, the beauty thinks about how strange Nora's behavior was. It is obvious that the lady feels inferior because of a child who did nothing. The character is only 3 years old, which makes the whole situation even funnier, but no one in the room would laugh if she said it out loud. Such people are everywhere, so perhaps you should just accept their existence. It's evening outside, which makes the girl want to eat even more. She did not even have breakfast, because the arriving guards immediately sent the princess to another place intended for the residence of Her Highness. Sitting on the balcony, Leonora carefully examines her hands. After the incident, the little girl became seriously interested in the forces that were hidden in the young body. It seemed like there was something similar to mana in Leia's body that made it more beautiful. Smiling, the beauty looks as if spellbound at her hands, which now look completely different. It will be possible to find a way to live with this after all the hype around her person finally subsides. Approaching closer to the edge, the blonde looks at the sunset, when the sun slowly but surely continues to set behind the mountains. It will be necessary to try different ways of receiving mana, because it is possible that the girl will be able to learn to control it using the plot of the novel. Attention is drawn to sounds coming from behind the door. The girl does not quite understand what is happening, because she was more than sure that there was no one there and she was left completely alone, even without servants. Looking to the side with interest, the heroine thinks about who it could be. There was no one who would want to come to her unless it was Nora, who, after sunset, decided on revenge, served cold. The doors slowly open, and a green bow tie appears. From it, you can immediately identify the person who arrived to the princess, because he is well known to her. Freezing, the blonde smiles in surprise. She is incredibly happy about this turn, because this is the cook Roberti, who always prepared the best for the lady when she lived in the old castle with her family. He cared deeply about the health of everyone around him, so he took the job. Smiling in response, the man is glad that the girl remembered such a low-born person. He is always too kind, and is always afraid to say the wrong thing, so as not to offend anyone or hurt another person. Beauty freezes, but then realizes that it seems almost impossible. The guy simply could not be here, especially since recently this has been prohibited. He had no motive, and simply coming to visit the heroine seemed an even more absurd idea. Holding out a packed jar of juice that glitters pleasantly in the sun, as if inviting him, asking him to drink, the man says that he could not help but come here, realizing that without his favorite drink, it would definitely be even worse in the situation in which the hostess found herself. Bowing his head, the cook says that yesterday he heard that the princess was very upset because she did not receive the juice, and since this bothered the good soul, the hero decided to prepare the drink and then take it to its destination. Looking at the bottle with fascination and accepting such a gift, the heroine tries to say something with her mouth open. A quiet "thank you" becomes the only thing that can be said, despite the fact that this is more than enough for the humble servant and employee. Turning her head, the beauty freezes. She notices someone standing behind her, even more familiar than the man who presented the gift. The blonde seems upset, even if his face is not entirely readable without seeing all the emotions. Sylvie, who has been nearby all this time, quietly asks what it was. He cannot formulate his thoughts, regretting that he sometimes has such a poor vocabulary. He seems disappointed, although there is nothing wrong with this, because his sister is only 3 years old. Quickly apologizing and trying to argue something, the cook tries to find an excuse. Leonora, not understanding what is happening, slowly bows her head. It will be necessary to find out what her brother forgot here, who, like everyone else, turned away from her even when the news about the dirty blood became known. The young master does not want to listen to anything at all. With his hands folded on his chest, the guy glares at the couple with a gaze that is ready to freeze anyone. You can understand that he does not like what is happening. Still not moving, the blonde repeats his question again. A man who is a servant is obliged to answer it and say what and why he just gave Leonora. She doesn't even deserve this, but, of course, this won't be said out loud. The brunette takes off his chef's hat and bows his head respectfully. You can see regret on his face, even though he hasn't committed any crime. It seems that he is unable to compose himself, so he simply mumbles words of apology. Trying to transfer her spirit to another, the blonde seems to be begging Robert with her eyes not to be afraid of the child. Sylvester cannot do anything, even if he is the second son of the Duke, who serves as a cook. He's just a baby, just like Leia, only a few years older and wiser. No longer going to stand on ceremony, the blonde furrows his brows, giving a final warning. He no longer intends to wait for an answer, and if nothing is said within a minute, it will become unbearably difficult for him to control himself and his anger with character. Deciding to take this step, Roberti almost shouts that he has arrived to give the lady the juice that she was unable to get yesterday at dinner and snacks. The boy still remains unshakable, not intending to pay attention to the frightened expression on his face. The eyes sparkle, terrifying everyone around. An icy voice pierces bones and skin when the guy asks if the cook has received permission from the Duke himself. After what happened, this is mandatory, despite the fact that the servants sometimes disobey this. The brunette, no longer able to bear it all, bows his head even lower, on the verge of bursting into tears. He does not have permission, and, of course, the Duke knows nothing about this, since he did not consider it necessary to bother the man over such trifles. The blonde standing nearby carefully looks into the eyes of her companion. She wants to somehow console him, or at least somehow help him, saving him from the wrath of her brother, who probably himself does not understand what is happening and why he is doing this. A wave of animal anger rolls over the heroine. Sylvester had no right to show up at the estate like that and then interfere with the cook, who had not done anything wrong at all. My brother definitely had some problems that could not be explained. Looking at the blonde, the girl just wanted to start screaming. He doesn't seem to have anything better to do, so he came all this way just to swear. The guy doesn't like it when the cook takes care of an illegitimate child, so when he decides to compare injustice, he pisses everyone off. There is no way out, because screaming will not help matters, so the princess hands the bottle of juice back, saying that she refuses to drink it. It's best to pretend that she's not on anyone's side, just so that no one gets hurt later. Fingers gently move the jar back when the man refuses to accept it. He brought it especially for the lady just to be drunk. The glass flies to the floor, shattering as it is passed from hand to hand. The brother stops and watches the thing fly, as if in slow motion. Falling to the floor, the fragments scatter into millions of even smaller particles, which are more than sharp. The young man breaks into a scream. The brunette jumps in horror, starting to fuss around the girl. He tries to find out if she is okay, even if he himself sees that things are, to put it mildly, not very good. Everything becomes clear from the facial expression. We are talking about the wound that now takes place on Leonora's body. The eyes of the guy who staged this whole performance grow to enormous sizes, making it clear that he made a huge mistake when he came here, ruining everyone's mood. The scarlet liquid spreads across the floor in small puddles. The smell of berries and lemon balm spreads throughout the room, making it clear that the compote tasted simply wonderful. It was never possible to try it, which was a great loss. The girl looks down at her leg, examining her ankle with interest. There was just a small scratch on his leg, even if in the eyes of other people everything was completely different. Not allowing his sister to finish her sentence, the guy picks her up in the air so that she no longer tries to do anything or take even a few steps, which could have an extremely bad effect on the condition of the wound as a whole. Walking forward, still holding the child in his arms, the young man asks Roberti to call the doctor to apply a bandage. You cannot waste a minute, because sometimes even a few moments are enough to make it impossible to do anything else. The brunette turns around and breaks into a run when, as the man follows, he asks him to hurry up. No one wants to wait forever, given that the estate is located on the other side of the main castle, which shows that it is problematic. Seating Leia on a chair, the boy sits in front of her and, with concern in his eyes, asks if the place where some blood has now collected hurts a lot. He doesn't want anyone to suffer, especially when it comes to someone close to him. The blonde silently clutches the hem of her dress, not even wanting to look at her interlocutor. He is so worried about a small scratch, although just recently he tried to take away some juice. There is no logic here, which only makes you feel even worse. The brother still silently looks into the eyes of his companion. He no longer says a word, only expressing his sympathy. Even through the mask on his face, you can understand that he regrets what he did. Frowning a little, the little girl thinks about what she should do. It is difficult to understand what Sylvie is thinking, who always walks with a straight face. He came here to say something, but in the end, he clearly abandoned his idea. Sylvester never had a friendly personality like Enoch, so he was clumsy in expressing his feelings. Usually, he just preferred to sit next to the couple and watch them have fun, distracted by reading a book or something else. The little girl understood that it was not the boy's fault that his care was developed differently. Moreover, no matter what, he still always looked after Leonora because she was his beloved younger sister. You should forget about this, locking all your feelings. Now, the virgin is no longer a relative to her former brother, so there is no longer any reason left to take care of her, trying to do everything for her in the best possible way. Approaching a few steps, the blonde gently asks Leia if her leg hurts much. The next sentence is even more strange, because the guy wants to check and examine the wound to understand how bad it is. But he is interrupted mid-sentence. The hand carefully reaches closer to touch and understand what happened, because perhaps everything is better than they think. There is not enough strength for anything. No longer willing to endure such uncertainty, the girl sharply puts out her arms and pushes her friend away from her with wild squeals. She wants Sylvester to leave as quickly as possible, leaving the place. Freezing and staring at his sister, the blonde asks a question in surprise, trying to find out what's wrong. It seemed to him that he had done nothing wrong, despite the fact that something had happened here. Trying to push her feelings as deep as possible, the beauty swallows noisily. She should stop giving in, because it will be much easier in the future without them. In such an environment, you shouldn't value anyone, because people also most often do not value anyone in return. This is how it should be, and the choice has already been made. Turning again towards the familiar, the process sullenly orders him to leave here and not interfere with her focus on other more important things. The plan will not fulfill itself, so it is worth starting from the first point. Walking away a short distance, Sylvie asks again, not understanding whether they really want to kick him out. He can't believe that Linny wants it to end. Young children tend to behave capriciously, even if they realize it. Trying not to cry, the beauty gathers all her strength into a fist and repeats her request again. She doesn't care about the feelings of people who will never care about her again and consider her a scum of society who was born as a result of a mistake. Not giving up, the blonde asks why everything turned out the way it did and what the reason was. He can't leave just because the girl gets it into her head that she doesn't need anyone else. She's just not in the mood, and that's the truth. Leia, clutching the hem of her dress, ponders the true answer. She doesn't want to repeat the mistake of her past life, no matter how strange it may sound. It's too late, but we need to admit it now, so that in the future, feelings do not become an obstacle to something great. Perhaps it's all just a dream, but then it's not the most pleasant thing out there. In this dream, the girl just wanted to have a family. They renounced her, causing more pain than if the whole truth had been revealed in the first place. Leonora did not consider herself guilty because she could not monitor her mother to prevent a mistake. The boy interrupts Leia's thoughts by calling out to her again. It is not clear why the virgin periodically freezes, trying to find words that ultimately will not be spoken. The girl asks not to call her that again, because there is a logical reason for this. The pain accumulates, about to shoot at the most inopportune moment. Bowing her head, the blonde swallows hard, saying that Sylvie is not her brother. There is some truth in this, because by blood they are absolutely nobody to each other. A little time will pass away, and then it will be possible to even forget about the existence of man. The boy's eyes widen in horror. He expected anything but this, because the words hurt his heart very much, breaking it into thousands of small fragments and leaving it lying somewhere on the floor. The words are unfair. The blonde takes a few steps back, opening his mouth in surprise. The same words echo in my head, making it clear that my sister really meant it. The princess never wastes words, even if she is only 3 years old. Trying not to shake from shock and tears, the guy asks if it's true. He wants to understand what this means, because in his understanding, it is a lie that was said by mistake. They lived together and spent almost all their time together, which affected the relationship. The girl opens her mouth to object or say something, but her arms spontaneously hug her own shoulders. A sudden cold came from all directions, along with gusts of wind that were only going to make things worse. Shifting her gaze somewhere out the window, Leia carefully tries to examine the young man. She can't believe it, but her eyes and feelings don't let her down. The brother uses mana, even though it may not be his will, but simply because he is upset. The voice becomes as cold as the atmosphere in the room. The blonde leans his head closer and asks the same thing again, ordering him to answer. No one can just fool him like that, after everything that happened. Turning away, the girl still continues to smile, just hoping that for her, this will not end completely in tears. He himself froze everything around him, and even her mouth, so he cannot expect his sister to answer anything. This reaction is extremely strange, because the guy himself was the first to start with juice when he came here. The feeling of cold is much more terrible than what was described in the book. The author clearly did not understand what he was talking about, not knowing that someone would end up in this ill-fated story. If this continues for even a few more minutes, it will all be over. The cold chilled my body right down to my fingertips, making me want to cry from the pain and fear that hindered my movements. The doctor, who just arrived at the estate with Lala, who simply could not stay away, is trying to stop the young master. He clearly lost his temper, making the others very nervous. It seems that he will never learn to control his emotions. The maid runs to the meeting, almost bursting into tears. She screams for all this to stop, because she needs to make sure that the young mistress is completely fine, despite the fact that she most likely is not. The guy turns sharply, ordering the maid not to approach. He just needs to hear an answer from Leia, otherwise he won't leave. He seemed to be out of control because of what was said just a few minutes ago. The girl is trying to give some signal signs so that they can help her and finally save her. She cannot stand it, even if she herself started it all, not fully realizing the meaning and power of her words. Lulu, who can no longer take even a few steps, only looks sympathetically towards the mistress and extends her hand, as if saying that she is with her and will not let her be offended. Turning to the heroine again, Sylvester comes closer, asking her to answer. The teeth are beating against each other due to the wild cold, which really completely fetters the actions in the mouth, which cannot move the blue lips. Dropping a little closer, the guy tries to hear what was just said. He seems overly interested, even if it's his fault. Virgo feels angry at herself and at him too. Jumping up from the sofa, which already feels more like an iceberg, the girl takes in more air and screams through the pain that she is cold. He himself did not notice how he lowered the temperature around him. The boy steps back and exclaims in horror. He didn't expect that he would be able to use mana simply because his anger bubbled up. The cold makes your head feel dizzy and hard to think, making it difficult to concentrate. No longer having the strength to understand what is happening and stay on her feet, the beauty falls to the floor. Sylvie runs closer, grabbing onto her, preventing her sister from hitting her. As soon as Leia gets better, she will definitely deal with the young man. The eyes slowly close, remaining only strong enough to look at the interlocutor, who does not move away, trying to calm his nerves, which have finally manifested themselves. The girl will definitely tell everything to her father so that he can do something about it. Looking at her brother for the last time, who is running around her in fear, the princess sadly remembers that she no longer has the right to complain to Gaspard. He doesn't love her anymore, which means he won't even listen to a single word that leaves the beauty's lips.